Hiya lovelies, and welcome one and welcome all to book club, specifically Shadowhunters book club. We are doing a complete series, Shadowhunter reread. It's going to be split up into a couple different reading vlogs though. There's a couple different ways I've seen people read these. Obviously you have publication order, chronological order, but I saw online on Simon Teen that they have a suggested reading order, which is this. This is the one we are going to follow. Obviously, I have read the entire series already. We are still waiting for the Wicked Power series, and I am waiting on the edge of my seat because I need more Kit and Ty in my life. But to tide us over, we are diving back into this series. Now, I originally read these series, and I actually originally read these copies of The Mortal Instruments when I must have been around 10 or 11 years old. It was ahead of the Mortal Instruments movie coming out with Jamie Campbell-Bower and Lily Collins and Robert Sheehan in it, which I still feel robbed that we did not get more of those movies. That movie was so good. The casting choices were amazing. Don't get me wrong, I love Show Malik so much. Magnus and Alec have a special little place in my heart, but the show diverged from the book so much. It just took some key essences from it, and then even with Malik, they understood that fans liked them so much, so we got so much extra content. I'm not mad that we got extra content, but it definitely took us away from the essence of what the books is. So in terms of an actual book to movie adaptation or book to TV adaptation, the film is definitely better, except we only got one of them. So you win some, you lose some. I'm 23 now. If I originally started reading these when I was 10 or 11, we have over a decade since I last started this series. Obviously, I've read books as they've been published since. I did read in publication order originally. But I'm interested to see what things I pick up on that I've forgotten, what things I pick up on reading in this order that I didn't get previously, connections I make, all of that fun stuff. And I'm also excited to see if this series I think is going to be my favourite across the whole Chronicles is still my favourite, which, spoiler alert, I think was The Dark Artifices. It broke me. It absolutely broke me. Now, this vlog alone, we're going to do the first 4 books. So that's the first 3 of the Mortal Instruments, City of Bones, City of Ashes, City of Glass. And then we go to the Eldest Curse little series, which is Magnus and Alec focused, for the Red Scrolls of Magic. This and all of my other reading vlogs for this series will be spoiler filled. So if you haven't read these books and you want to, or you just don't want to experience spoilers, please click away now. I love that you came to see me, but please leave now. So the reason we're doing spoiler filled, because I've read these before, I think what's going to be really interesting is picking up on how things are foreshadowed that I might not have originally picked up on, not knowing later revealed, and how Cassandra Clare sows the seeds of little Easter eggs of what's to come earlier in the novels or earlier in a series. I also want to talk so much about character development because we're analysing as well as reacting. I have an English Lit degree, it's what I do. But without further ado, I will hand over to Vlogging Holly, and if you're interested in seeing more of these vlogs for the whole Shadowhunters Chronicles, make sure you subscribe and leave me a little comment on what is your favourite book in the Shadowhunters Chronicles. Okay, over to Vlogging Holly. I'm hoping a version of me that has hair and makeup done has actually probably introed this video and said what we're doing. We're doing a series of reading vlogs that are to do with the Shadowhunters Chronicles. These are the first 3 books of the Mortal Instruments. You can tell I read these ages ago because I still have these original covers. Let's jump into book 1, City of Bones, and I can talk about what of the casting choices for either the movie or the TV show I liked better, because Jamie Campbell-Bower as Jace Wayland Lightwood Herondale was one of the best choices ever made. We are only on chapter 5, we have 58 pages in, but I already have thoughts. First and foremost, who was going to remind me of how much of a genius writer Cassandra Clare is? I forgot the quality of world building. Somehow this is a fantasy story where you are dropped right into the action without it feeling too slow, without it feeling like you don't know what's going on. You are slowly introduced to this world, yet it never feels like you're spending too much time world building without any action. It is the perfect mix. Also, something I've realised is there's a lot of literary references in here, even just the quotes at the start of the book, at the start of the parts. We've had some Paradise Lost in here, and since the last time I read this series, I've completed a literature degree, so I've read Milton's Paradise Lost and analysed it in detail. I understand a lot more of those classical literary references. I think that's going to become even more interesting and important when we get to the infernal devices. You can see them just down here, because I feel like books are so central to our characters and their dynamics in there. But I don't know, I just get a little thrill of knowing I understand those references. You are bobbling all over the place, so I'm gonna get back to reading. Okay, we've sourced the album. Honestly, this is one of my favorite songs. This is such an underrated Demi Lovato song, Heart by Heart. I love it. And then we have our little book. Let's jump in. So I've never particularly considered Clary one of my favourite characters in this series, but I think it's because I completely forgot about moments like this. Clary just asked Jace if there was some way that he could tell that she had Shadowhunter blood before putting a rune on her, because runes can turn Mundies into Forsaken, essentially drive them insane and then kill them. I guessed, he said, latching the door behind them. It seemed like the most likely explanation. You guessed. You must have been pretty sure, considering you could have killed me. I was 90% sure. I see. Her hand cracked across his face, a slap that rocked him back on his heels. What the hell was that for? The other 10%. That's iconic behaviour. If you ask me, that is iconic behaviour. And to be fair, you kind of deserved it, Jace. Okay, we're on page 110, and this is one of those iconic quotes that I'm fairly sure made it into the movie. This is Simon and Clary reuniting, and he's been worried about her, and he's trying to express that worry, and he makes this jab at Jace that he's a dyed blonde wannabe goth. Oh, Jace just, while he's filing his nails with his Stello, says this, and my hair is naturally blonde. Just for the record. We have made it to part 2, which is Easy as the Descent. Our little quote is from Virgil's Aeneid. We just finished part 1 on some marriage bombshells. One thing I'm really noticing in this book, and it's also why I think the movie was such a good adaptation, is I can see in my brain, almost frame for frame, as we're going through the chapters, how this translate to the movie, and in turn I saw how the movie translated the book when I first watched it, and as I've watched it subsequently since. Obviously that is going to be a unique experience to just this first book specifically, but my god, I'm having fun with this. I'm getting all those little nostalgic feelings about it. I think it's interesting because some of that frame for frame translation means I'm probably more familiar with this book than I am in the ins and outs working of the other books. I remember the general plot, I remember a lot of the relationships, etc. This book feels so familiar, so much like a warm cozy blanket on a rainy day. It feels like a movie you've watched a million times, because I literally have. I don't think I'll have that same experience to that extent with the rest of the book, so I think I'll be more surprised about what I find. But into Easy as the Descent, aka we go to the City of Bones. Hey lovelies, it is the next day now, so essentially I didn't actually read any more from when I last updated you last night. I have a shoulder injury that's acting up. I took some painkillers. We got a little bit sleepy, so we went to sleep on what our bodies need. We went and made a little coffee. I was going to film this, but everyone in my family decided to be in the kitchen, and they aren't online people, so we respect the space. If someone asked me what was the main thing I miss from living alone at uni, being able to film whenever, whatever, wherever I so desired, at least in my home. But we roll with the punches. It's something we're adapting to as we've moved home. This is a cute little coffee. At some point in this vlog, or one of these Shadowhunters reading vlogs, I will show you how I make this coffee. This is TK Maxx. I think it's like hand painted, which is so cute, or Home Sense technically, but TK Maxx and Home Sense are practically the same thing, even though they do exist in 2 separate shops in a retail park really close by me. Anyway, we're going to jump back into reading. I'm excited because we're in part 2 now. The next chapter, I believe, is the City of Bones. We see that for the first time, meet the Silent Brothers, and then I believe soon we see Magnus Bane for the first time, who, my love, my life, the gorgeous bisexual man himself, a man who's not afraid of leather and glitter and lace and all things dramatic. He's a man after my own heart. I actually feel I probably have muddled some of my personality after Magnus Bane over the years. But let's jump in. Shadowhunters, looking better in black than the widows of our enemies since 1234. This is where my sense of humour comes from. This and my mother are what I credit with my sense of humour. The descent into hell is easy. Honestly, I feel like the world could use that reminder at the moment. The descent into hell is easy. You're always closer to a fall from grace than you imagine yourself to be. We need that reminder as a world at the moment. Actually, I forgot the interesting, obviously the circle in this and the politics of that, but actually I'm gonna be interested to see now, with obviously all of the socio-political contexts that have happened over the past few years, and also the more knowledge I have of past socio-political conflicts compared to when I was like 10 or 11, how I can draw parallels with the politics of these novels. Because one thing I remember is Cassandra Clare builds a very politically complex world. Politics is intertwined into everything that happens within it. I mean, the reason that Valentine is our antagonist is he is literally looking to build a fascist regime. Somehow I feel like I'd forgotten how feisty Clare is. She's got a lot of fight in her, and imagine how scared she must be. I mean, she's 15, her mother has gone missing, she finds out that she used to be married to this psychopath who has seemingly kidnapped her, who she faked her death to get away from, so she must be so frightened, and she's kind of rolling with the punches. Okay, so we've just got to the part where Clary asks Izzy if Alec is gay, and Izzy is so protective of Alec and accepting, but wants to keep him safe essentially, and keep his secret safe because of the society they live in. Now you need to remember, this was published in around 2006, 2007. Gay marriage hadn't been legalised, social attitudes towards the queer community were a lot different. Even when I first read this, it would have been around the time, maybe a year before, maybe the year of, gay marriage being legalised in the UK, and I think it was a year after in America. The context in which it was written and published, and then even the context in which I read this for the first time, this battle of self-acceptance, of looking at homophobic societies and internalized homophobia, and the complex explorations of that we get to see with Alec in this, and then as we continue through the series, the really great complex and diverse queer characters that Cassandra Clare writes. They're really, really important, and it was really the first time that I saw this kind of representation in literature and in media in general at the time. Is something that I'm not sure we give Cassandra Clare enough credit for. Complex, nuanced, and human depictions of sexuality and self and identity that accompany this urban fantasy setting with all of its politics. Alec, my beautifully broken Alec, I need you to hear the words you're saying. I know you're saying them to Magnus about him being a warlock, but just think about them, babe, because it isn't your fault. You can't help how you're born. Alec, I think you're the one that may need to listen to that message a little bit, and then the entire kind of Shadowhunters society, but someone needs to look that man in the face, that boy in the face, and go, it isn't your fault, you can't help how you're born. Something obviously noting, because I've read these before and I know Magnus is a character, and Magnus is the character that is just present for literally everything. Nothing that Clave has done has earned my unswerving loyalty. No. But something a very few specific sets of Shadowhunter families have done definitely has. They have definitely wormed their way into your heart. So I've just gone down, I made and ate dinner, and now we have grabbed a glass of wine, which I actually need this hand grab. This is my well done bottle of wine because I got 85 in my master's dissertation, so I bought myself a bottle of wine to celebrate, which is the Freixenet Pinot Grigio, I believe. And then, you know, because it's a Saturday night, and what am I if not classy, we have some cheese to go with the wine. It is a cheese string, but it's still wine and cheese. Anyway, I'm going to settle down and get back into reading. We're at page 234. We have met Magnus. He has flirted a little bit with Alec. And we are going to save Rat Simon. Also, Alec going big brother when Izzy says Simon is a rat, thinking he needs to protect her. I love that. I love that.
I forgot this is how we meet Raphael.
Oh, Alec. My poor little repressed bean. The desire to keep secrets about your identity and crushes and trying to protect yourself and how that causes hostility towards others. Very interesting conversation to have and psychological perspective from which to build a character. I think this is something we see in Cassandra Clare, right? She doesn't just build warriors, she builds fleshed out characters. She doesn't just build downworlders, she builds characters with a backstory and who carry that backstory with them, who carry all facets of their identity. They aren't reduced to just one thing. They are complex and interesting and grounded. And Jace is a brilliant example of that, and Alec is definitely a brilliant example of that. Welcome one, welcome all. We just read chapter 17, which is The Midnight Flower, and my god, we have to talk about how good of a writer Cassie Clare is, just as a descriptive writer. We know as YA readers she was expanding all of our vocabularies and just created these luscious and tantalizing images like in the greenhouse in this scene. Jason Clary. I was just here sipping my little wine and being like, yes, this is what I'm here for. Give me the lowdown. Go. And I was so happy for them. And then Jace's walls come up because he perceives rejection or not being desired or not being wanted. It takes vulnerability for Jace to let someone in this manner, and Jace does not do vulnerability well. His whole thing is being the best Shadowhunter of their age. It's part of his defense because he wants to not only protect himself, but he wants to be fierce and a protector of others, and that warrior nature of him, that personification of a defense, is what he has created to hide his hurt. Obviously, we've already heard the Raven story. To love is to destroy, and to be loved is to be the one destroyed. He would rather be the personification of a weapon, of a defense, than be vulnerable in that way. Be vulnerable to be destroyed. In the kiss, he lets himself be vulnerable. And as soon as Simon interferes and there's this real sarcastic exchange, and it shows how they use sarcasm differently as well, which I think is really interesting, and it's where Jamie Campbell-Bower and Robert Sheehan really do justice to these characters. If you go and watch that scene, he becomes a weapon against his own vulnerability, and it's almost like he acts on impulse in that way. It's not purposeful, he's trained himself into it. When you peel back all the layers and you get to know him throughout the series, honestly, Jace's character development is one of my favourite things about the Mortal Instruments. It's like 9:30 and we've just made it to part 3, which is The Descent Beckons, because the descent into hell is easy, the descent beckons. But we have under 100 pages left. Things are ramping up. Luke is back. I feel like Luke is so much a bigger part of the books than the movies, but they changed the character of Luke so much in the TV series that, I mean, we need the Werewolf's Tale to remember who Luke is. We have under 50 pages to go, and Jace's daddy issues have entered the chat, people. They've entered the chat, and honestly, I forgot how shockingly they do it. I'm probably now just going to finish this. Like I say, there's under 50 pages left. I want to fly through them and then I will come back. Okay, we're done. I would like to point out Magnus is the one that came and healed Alec and then sits by his bedside to make sure he wakes up. This is a man who tried to claim that he has no loyalty to Shadowhunters, and I mean, when we get into the Infernal Devices and the Last Hours, we know that's not true. He has some clear friendships and allegiances with Shadowhunters and Shadowhunter families. Magnus is a caretaker, and you know this so blatantly towards the end of this series and throughout the Chronicles as a whole, but you see those glimpses of it in here. The fact that he recognizes Clary and has taken some joy in seeing her grow up. The fact that even though he kicks everyone out and is kind of moody about it, he does ultimately help Clary and Jace find Simon. It's in the fact that he comes and heals Alec. It's in the fact that he gives Jace this motorcycle, and you hear that he's complained about it being left behind after a party, but I think some part of him, having found out what's happened, because he's a high warlock of Brookland, and it's noted he's been plugged into Downwelder gossip, he knows what's happened. This was something to bring Jace a little bit of joy, a little reprieve, a moment of freedom amongst all this complexity. Now we can speculate if that's a little bit to do with Magnus's own complex relationships with parental figures, both his father, his stepfather, and we did hear a little bit about that. We'll hear more about it later into Magnus's story. But he does care so deeply, especially for our silly little Shadowhunters that he claims to have no allegiance to and keeps helping. It builds this world so well, it introduces us to characters, it differentiates our characters really well. Alongside that, we have complexities like Alec's character, his complex feelings towards his own identity and sexuality, and navigating those, navigating his relationship with Jace as Parabatai, who are these warriors bound together, almost like warrior soulmates, I guess. They are brothers in arms, quite literally. On top of that, they are adoptive brothers, and yet Alec has this unrequited crush on Jace. We have the complexities and brokenness that is Jace Wayland / Morgenstern, as we know him currently. And I think that quote about him and his falcon with "to love is to destroy and to be loved is to be the one destroyed," it so succinctly sums up Jace as a character. He is someone who is so scared to love or to be loved because he associates it with pain that he throws up these defenses and almost becomes a defense personified. He becomes a warrior and a weapon as a way to protect himself and protect the people he cares about. Then obviously we have the political complexities of the uprising and the circle and them returning. I believe, especially towards the end of this novel, in that final battle, the relationship between Luke and Valentine and their history together is actually incredibly interesting. It shows this push and pull between loyalty, especially loyalty of those who feel they are indebted to someone, and this moral tug of war when they no longer agree with the person they view who has gifted them something. And we see that warring with Luke because we know he doesn't throw away life like it's meaningless compared to exactly what Valentine does, which is he carelessly throws away life for his own selfish desires. And the whole world of Shadowhunters is introduced, and that is used to establish the fact that Shadowhunter society operates within its own rules and laws and social standards, to understand things like Alec's relationship to his sexuality and this idea of duty among Shadowhunters. And something that I actually never really picked up on properly, I think the first time I read this, was the sheer weight of the atmosphere of this world. And what I mean by that is probably best described in the Institute, right? The Institute is in a cathedral, which in general are physically imposing buildings. They're physically impressive. Their air has a weight to them. You feel it stood in them. I am someone who literally graduated within a cathedral. I went to Durham University for my undergrad. We graduate in the cathedral there. It is incredibly impressive and imposing, and the building itself feels like it has a lifeline and almost a soul to it. And what's kind of happening with having the Institute in that is you harvest and harbour that atmosphere of a cathedral. Like there could be a whole other life that's lived there because you have the history of lives lived there existing as one with your reality, and that makes this shadow world that is existing just further than we can see that bit more believable to me, because it's existing in those areas, in those moments where we already feel the weight of history and other lives. Now obviously that is book 1 done. We still have other books to read. We will start book 2 tomorrow. For right now, I'm going to finish my glass of wine and head to bed. It is a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life, and before we get into reading today, because we are going to start City of the Ashes, I have a couple things I want to do. We have a parcel arrived, which should be my new ring light. Exciting. I also want to go down to the garage and I have a chair that was my desk chair in my uni rooms, and it's not the most plush chair in the world, but it is quite cute, and I'm hoping to set it up as kind of like a reading corner, reading nook, have blankets on it, somewhere I can sit in my bedroom that's not my bed to read and just prop it by my bookshelf. So we're going to try and grab her. We're going to do her a little wipe down, a little hoover over her to get rid of any spiders that may have found her, and we're going to bring her in, and we're also going to make a coffee. So we're going to do those little bits and then we will read. A chair under all these bags for life is what we need. Also, I said it was cold and Mum hand delivered me a hot water bottle before they went out, and putting it in my waistband is the only way that I can keep her in here while I'm outside. I'm not pregnant. It's just a hot water bottle. Anyway, yeah. They're also my moving boxes, and this little trolley is also mine. Okay, she's hoovered, she's in place. I need a little tie for these curtains. For now, the chair is the tie. But like, we get good light, we have the books. I'm happy. Mostly extinct is not extinct enough. We've made it to page 54. I read up until page 54, and then I watched the quarterfinals of the Women's Rugby World Cup. I watched England beat Scotland, so we are in the semi-finals, and I'm very happy about it. I think we're playing France next weekend. I will be watching. Did I know anything about rugby before this Women's Rugby World Cup? No, not really. Did I go to a big rugby uni? Yes. Did I listen to any of the rugby boys? No, never. But we love supporting women's rights and women's wrongs, and the women are only doing right in sport at the moment, so we love that for them. One thing that really struck me in the beginning of this book is I feel like this is where we finally see Jace the person. I talked a lot about how I think Jace creates himself in the image of a personified weapon. He personifies his defenses to become who he presents himself as, and whether that's in his sarcasm, whether that's in his skill as a fighter, because it protects his vulnerabilities and it stops his vulnerabilities from being able to be manipulated. But we saw this divide between the power of vulnerabilities being able to be manipulated, meaning to love is to destroy and to be loved is to be the one destroyed. That whole premise, we saw that with Jason Valentine in the ending of City of Bones, but we also saw how vulnerabilities and love could translate to strength in Jace and Clary's bond. So we've seen his defense mechanism of weaponizing himself be broken down. And that means that when we meet Jace in City of Ashes, he's being incredibly self-destructive, and that is him to a T. When he doesn't know how to handle his emotions, when he's overwhelmed, he goes looking for a fight. But once Maris comes in, and by the way, can I say how much I do not like Maris Lightwood? I am not her biggest fan. She literally kicks Jace, who is a child still. He's 17 in this, kicks him while he's down, kicks him while he has all these really complex ideas surrounding his relationship to his father, who he thought his father was, and trying to reconcile that relationship with who he knows Valentine to be, the things he knows Valentine to have done, and also who he sees himself to be in that light. He's going through a lot of these really complex feelings and not necessarily coping with them in the best way, although having Izzy and Alec there to hunt is better than if he went on his own. That does not mean he's facing his emotions by any means, nor letting people help him. So we really see Jace as a teenager in this. That's what he is when he comes into the Hunter's Moon, and when he goes looking for Luke. In a way, he is looking for someone who he knows is going to defend him and protect him in a way that a parent would. And Luke, he may not biologically have any children in this series, but my god, is he the best parent we see this far into the series. Because Jace is self-destructing, and he himself even says, wait, let me find it. I want to be an angst-ridden teenager who can't confront his own inner demons and takes it out verbally on other people instead. That's literally what he's doing. He's self-aware enough to know that's what he's doing, and he's joking about it. Again, he's almost using that as a defense, right? He recognizes that that's what he wants because he is a teenager, and it's the first time we really get to see Jace acting like one, because the persona he's built has crumbled and he doesn't know what to do with it. If you didn't like Jace in the first book, I don't know how someone couldn't, but if you didn't like the very defensive thing he had going on, this instantly breaks that down, and it instantly disarms any preconceived notions you have about Jace, because you're seeing Jace be vulnerable. If you haven't noticed, Jace, Wayland / Morgenstern / Lightwood / spoiler alert, Herondale. I could write an entire essay about his character development, how he deals with trauma, all the traumas that he has, and also the difference between lineage and personal identity, and how not knowing where you come from or the people you come from can often lead to a feeling of not knowing yourself, but yet Jace still has such a clear identity, even if it's not clear to himself. I mean, he seems to have a crisis about it constantly. Jace, we know his heart. Since book 1, one of the first things Izzy says about Jace when talking to Clary is that he is not a liar. He will tell you the truth, even if it's a truth you do not want to know. He has a moral compass, and he acts, lives, dies by that moral compass. Okay, we're almost done with part 1, which means I have things to say, but one thing that just got me is Magnus Bane arrives after the Silent Brothers are dead, which I forgot happened. I forgot all of this happened. After rescuing Jace, after Alec and Clary and Izzy have all rescued Jace from the Silent City, where he was in a cell because of the Inquisitor, where she's all like, he's faking being injured to get away and he doesn't need help. That is neglect, ma'am. That is neglect. Anyway, Magnus arrives described as, quote, the High Warlock was wearing black leather pants, a belt with a buckle in the shape of a bejeweled M, and a cobalt blue Prussian military jacket open over a white lace shirt. He shimmered with layers of glitter. Okay, I'm not saying he's iconic, but he's iconic for that. I adore that. And then the first thing he said is he dead? He looks dead. I love this man. Like, if I was any character in this series, if I was any character in the Mortal Instruments, I would want to be Magnus. I think that's self-explanatory at this point. Hey, roommate. Magnus Bane to the rescue. Magnus Bane looking after wayward Shadowhunters. Actually, wait, doesn't he joke that his house is like the house of wayward Shadowhunters at some point? Or is that from the TV show? I can't quite remember, but he is an icon. Now we're doing a little Dante Inferno quoting. Jace just did it, and then that is the quote we have on our part 2, The Gates of Hell. We're at page 126. We're going to take a little break to talk about it. Like I say, I feel like I had forgotten so much that happens in the first part of this book. I remembered the Hunter's Moon. I remembered that Maya gets introduced. And I actually didn't remember that Simon and Clary stuff kind of happens already. I don't love this era. I don't love the Simon and Clary era. Honestly, at the beginning, when I first read this series, I think my disdain for Simon and Clary together bled into me not necessarily loving Simon as a character. I don't mind Simon as a character when we get a little further into this book and he becomes a vamp. It just feels so forced. It feels like the relationship where it's like, you've been friends for so long, you owe it to yourself to see if it will work, but it's not romantic love. It doesn't feel like it, and I don't think they have that much chemistry. But we're making do. I feel this is the first time in this book that I'm going to stop and say it's not incest. We need to point this out. But like I say, we're at page 125. I believe we have about 120-ish pages that make up this part, which is part 2. So I'm going to try and get through that tonight before calling it a day, I think. I genuinely think Magnus Bane as a character just exists to find loopholes in what the clave says, so our main shadow hunters can get away with doing whatever they want. And I love that for him. How much do people know about Alec and Magnus? Because when Clary's like, we should get you back to Magnus's, and like essentially being like, we should relieve Alec of being there, or Alec might get stuck there forever if you don't come back, blah 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 blah. Jace is there like, I don't think that would be seen as much of a hardship, actually. So what does he know? I need to know. I love Magnus. He's turning up to what is essentially a burial and rising of the undead. And he stalks in, impossibly tall and thin and glowering in a long leather coat that flapped in the wind like a bat's swing. Go off, boo. Stylish as ever. When you originally read this, there's so much about Izzy's character that you don't actually pick up because you don't know that she definitely cares for Simon in a way that she is used to frivolous flirting, she is used to being wanted and throwing boys away, and she wants so badly to be friends with Clary, who is Jace's sister, his other sister, if you will. She doesn't want animosity, Izzy, because she does care for the people around her. She always will, and she always has. As soon as Simon and Clary are together, she steps back. She continues her frivolous flirtations anyway, but we can see that she cares for him in the stuff with the grave, and in his death, and also more than that, in how she protects him in the Sealy Court. There is definitely some clear moments of Izzy showing tenderness to Simon that you wouldn't necessarily pick up on if you don't know what they eventually become. As I so love to say, it's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life. We're on to the next day now. We didn't quite make it all the way through part 2 of City of Ashes. We got to page 206. I have been sat here reading. I'm doing a little how many pages can I read in an hour vlog for TikTok, so I've just paused that to update you guys, but I've read another chapter, and one thing I want to point out, because this is the chapter when Luke gets attacked by demons, but then Jace points out that Magnus is dating Alec. Essentially, Magnus gets a little bit annoyed that he's the High Warlock, or the Warlock in general, that they keep hitting up. And he says, did you think I was helping out of the goodness of my heart, or am I just the only Warlock you happen to know? Jace replies, no, but you are the only Warlock we know who happens to be dating a friend of ours. Obviously meaning Alec. There's the whole Alec trying to deny it and saying, why would you say something like that? Jace points out, I never said who, but interesting that you knew exactly what I meant, getting a bit defensive about how he wasn't told. And then Magnus gets a bit hurt by this, obviously, and bringing in his defenses and his sarcasm, going, oh, so you're just that friendly with everybody, is that it? When Alec claims they aren't dating. And then Jace turns to Magnus, asking essentially Magnus to help him convince Alec that he won't mind. And Magnus could express his hurt by throwing this or shooting this arrow into this situation, right, and saying because he loves you, but instead because he does love Alec and he doesn't want to hurt him, even if this situation in turn is hurting Magnus, he just replies, oh, Magnus said quietly, I think he believes you about that, and doesn't throw Alec under the bus, but you can tell he's hurt. And it's just this brilliant moment from Magnus, and it's the first moment that we really see him, rather than jokingly, actually tiredly complaining about how he's being used by these shadow hunters. It's along the lines of those claims that he doesn't owe the clave anything. And finally we see this strain of Magnus is not someone who wants to be hidden, but I think he also still understands why Alec is dubious. So it's just this beautiful little nuance. It's not the point of the scene, but it's a beautiful little nuance to the scene. But we're at page 228. I think we have one more chapter left in this part. Yeah, and then we'll be on part 3. We're about to get into some of the action. We're done Okay, so I literally filmed me reading the last 100 pages for a reaction TikTok. I forgot so many details in this that make it so good. First and foremost, Luke is the best parent anyone has, and I will stand on that point. Also, the Inquisitor, not a fan at all, although the story of her family, important. There's Stephen, who divorces his first wife, then gets with young Celine. He dies and then she commits suicide while 8 months pregnant. Let's all remember that one, because it will come into play. And is it like a scar or a birthmark or something of like a star that Imogen recognizes on Jace's shoulder when she suddenly become a rational human being? You are in a position of authority. You cannot neglect a child like this. I'm not having grief cited as a reasonable excuse. That does not redeem you in my eyes, Inquisitor Imogen Herondale. I love that we seem to get more Magnus flamboyance. We got more description of outfits, which is my favorite thing. We literally get to see his personality coming through a little bit more. We also get to see in the subtext of the Magnus Alec moment this difficult journey Alec is going on, not only with his own sexuality, because we seem to suggest that he's accepted that a little bit more, but more his relationship with Magnus, wanting to honour that, but also his duty as a shadow hunter, and then his feelings for Jace, trying to navigate all of those things. In turn, Magnus wanting to be loved and celebrated openly, but also being aware of Alec's internal struggles and trying to honour that, not throw him under the bus, but also still feeling hurt. That is explored in a really interesting and nuanced way, even though we only see it in short subtext moments. At this point in gay media, it's what's not said where we find all of the interesting content. Don't worry, we get to see more of them as the series goes on. And we always need one of them. It's not actually incest. Thank you for joining in the chorus. It's almost midnight, so I am going to head to bed. But tomorrow we will pick up City of Glass. Yes, City of Glass. Good morning, my lovelies. It is a new day. We are currently marinating in fake tan, so we are in dark clothes. It's not the greatest look, and we don't plan to move from this chair because my bedding is white. So we're going to sit here for a while, but we are starting City of Glass today. Again, I remember the ending of this book. I remember some of the details in between, but I don't remember all of the interactions. So that is what I'm excited for. So obviously, to an extent, we expect Cassie to use quotes from things like the Bible, because we do have the Lucifer falling and the angels and demons of it all. It pulls on religious texts, right? But what I didn't actually realize until literally looking at the dedication in this book is how frequently Paradise Lost, Milton's Paradise Lost, comes as a kind of motif throughout the literary references of these novels. But I just read for an hour. I read 3 chapters. We don't have a prologue in this book, which is interesting that book 2 is the only one so far with a prologue. We're on page 72 and so much has happened. This book jumps right into the action, which I think is what it needs to do. In certain ways, book 1 and 2 are the lead up to this one, because Cassandra Clare does write in trilogies, and you can feel it in this series. The first 3 of the 6 The Mortal Instruments books feels like a trilogy in and of itself. A bit like the Fast and Furious movies. They all fit into trilogies in my brain. Anyway, so much has happened. We instantly start with the battle scene, and this is something Cassandra Clare will go on to do in later books as well. It sets a precedent. It's the first time we see her properly do it. What it tells us is that this small battle is so insignificant compared to the large-scale battle scenes we will see later on in the book that we can just put it in the first chapter or first 2 chapters and it's perfectly fine. It's that inconsequential. So it foreshadows the level of violence and the large-scale battle scenes we will see later on as the significant fight and action scenes of the novel. But I just think it's a little genius part of storytelling. We got Magnus calling Clary Biscuit for the first time, which is incredibly cute, and I think it also showcases Magnus's fondness for Clary in a way that he comments on having in City of Bones, but we don't necessarily see reflected in the other books so far, other than that one scene in City of Bones. A little bit of that is because I think Magnus's whole point was wanting to be acknowledged and shown off as a partner, but also understanding the restraints and constraints of the Shadowhunter world. That was very much Magnus's focus. But when he says, you know, that he usually charges and am I the only warlock you know, I think some of his fondness for these Shadowhunter families, but as he specifically says in here, Clary, some of that got forgotten a little bit. So I think we're still trying to find solid ground in this series of these characters. And it makes sense. They are the first books in this world. So much of our focus was on world building that now we're finally beginning to almost builds the landscape of how all of our different characters interact with each other. We're also introducing so many characters in this one. And Simon is in Alicante. Clary made a portal. She then fell into Lake Lynn, which is poisonous to Shadowhunters, by the way. And now they're going to see Luke's friend. Spoiler alert, I'm fairly sure it's his sister. 72 pages, people. 72 pages. So much has happened. We are at chapter 7, which is page 140, and there are definitely a few things I'm noticing in this one that are indicative of how Cassie goes on to write later down in the series. And I think this is perhaps because we're the third book in the series, this is the third published book in the Shadowhunter Chronicles in general. Cassie's getting to grips with the writing style she wants to use and the structure of the series as a whole. So as a result, we're actually getting some of those recognizable traits come up, right? We're getting switching perspectives that allow us to see more of the story. It also means that we aren't just focusing on one singular storyline anymore. We're diversifying around our cast of characters, and as a result, we're also getting to see how our, if you will, our periphery characters that aren't Clary and Jace interact with one another. I already noted, I think, how we see Clary and Magnus interact a little bit more, which I loved. I think we're actually seeing the building of some kind of friendship between Simon and Jace now, and we're seeing more from Simon as a character in his own right. He's not just a tag along for Clary anymore. He can operate within his own scenes, which is actually where I start liking Simon a lot more. Jace, oh dear sweet Jace. Obviously, I've said before, I think he was one of the best, most well-written and fleshed out. We're seeing that a bit more for other characters. I think Cassandra Clare finally realizes how she wants to portray Alec outside of his relationship with Magnus and his identity. Essentially, she's figuring out how she wants to portray him as a shadow hunter, and that is someone who respects duty, who is the eldest, but also who is fiercely protective of his people, and again has his own kind of moral understanding, his own moral compass that will mean he will follow, you know, Jace and Clary and everyone else into these quote-unquote bad decisions because he understands why they're doing it, or he trusts their thought processes. He is a fierce warrior and a protector, which I don't think we got characterized so much until this book. I also love that we're seeing some actual camaraderie and friendship between Alec and Clary. This feels like the binding up of the introduction of everything, and we're finally settled into the world and the characterization after this book. And I think a little bit of that comes with, we have a longer book this time, we have a bigger cast of characters, so what were our periphery characters are now actually just a larger cast of main characters that we know because there are known characters to an even bigger cast of supporting characters. So you have to strengthen their storylines and make them worthwhile because you have to utilize the known characters in this big cast of characters. Now, of course, Jace is being self-destructive. We've talked before how he tries to personify himself into a weapon. To love is to destroy, and to be loved is to be the one destroyed. He is both fearful that if he gets too close to the people he cares about, his love will destroy them, and he also wants to punish himself for showing vulnerabilities because he's seen the consequences of that happening before. So he will both self-destruct and push people away because he perceives himself to be protecting them, and he will also try and create this hardened outer layer with sarcasm and his fighting skills as a mask so that he doesn't get too close. It's punishment to himself for the repercussions of showing his vulnerabilities and showing his care, especially when Valentine is close. And I think a lot of Jace's actions in this, which are they're self-destructive and they are very defensive, especially towards Clary. I would suggest 140 pages in, a lot of that is to do with the proximity or the perceived proximity to Valentine. Like I say, Jace is honestly one of the most interesting characters to me, but Simon gets really interesting in this book. I remember this. Obviously, we have the pieces falling together now. What happened on that boat that was unique? Simon's realised he drank Jace's blood. Could it be Jace's blood that's the reason he can walk in the daylight? We have the voice in the cell next to him that's called him a daylighter. We know they are using the symbols of his religion against him. We have the Stars of David and the Seal of Solomon, as well as lines from the Torah, I believe they said, to keep him from being able to hold any of the bars or the doors or anything on his cell. They're using his religion against him. I think I got to the point where I was talking about how they've weaponized Simon's own faith against him, which, even though I know that he's undead and they can't necessarily worship faith in the same way, I feel that that's such a breaking of his morale. Having something that you believed in and was such a key tenement of your life weaponized against you, that would just break you, surely. This is why we hate Inquisitor Auditory with a passion. At this point, it just seems like to become Inquisitor, you have to be a bad person who is willing to abuse, neglect others for your own personal vendettas, for your own political gain, take from it what you will. But we're going to continue reading, and this time around, like I did with the first book, when I had the movie soundtracks playing, I've chosen a specific album for this one. With City of Ashes, I tried to find a specific City of Ashes playlist, see if someone had made one, but I couldn't find one I really gelled with. However, I really felt like Hurts Like Hell, the song by Flowery, was a great Jace song for City of Ashes, so I actually just found the album it was from, and I'm playing this on repeat. It seems to work quite well. It's literally called Love and War. If these books are not about love and war, what else are they about? I will say, I feel like Alec making Jace heal his injuries of a hand he put through a window, making him heal it like a mundane Big Brother energy. Such Big Brother energy. I think the reason we're starting to see some kind of friendship forming between Jace and Simon is because Simon is actually someone Jace can tell the truth to. He's not someone that Jace already cares about. He's someone Clary cares about, which is why he wishes to protect him. But he doesn't feel like he has to actively push him away or hold the same pretenses up around Simon. So he actually reveals a little bit more truth to Simon than he would to, say, Alec, because he's not trying to manage expectations and maintain a mask as much with Simon. Thus it makes it feel like they are growing some kind of, maybe not true friendship, but an understanding. Whenever Clary is talking about Sebastian, she's talking about this jolt of familiarity between them, and I'm just here like, because I know, just stay away from him. He gives bad vibes. Stay away. Because he is a creep. Do you ever just physically want to be able to go in a book, just be like, no, stay away, go, bye? Because that's what I want to do to Sebastian. Pretty boys offering you the one thing you don't know how to get? No. This book is just jam-packed with things happening. Magnus pretending to be Ragnarfell. Magnus then freezing Sebastian because he doesn't trust Sebastian, and talking to Clary saying, find the lost book of the White, which Ragnar told Jocelyn West Hyde, which is in the Wayland Manor Library. Who would not be able to get to a highly glamoured Wayland Manor where the wards are trying to send people, misdirect them, send them the wrong way, all of this? Of course, Jace, because he lived there for years. So now we have to make up with Jace. Similarly, Magnus does not seem to trust Sebastian at all, so asks Clary not to tell him who Magnus actually is. Magnus also continues to insist that he has no side in this fight, even though, let's face it, we know he does. And then also he talks about Alec. Alec refuses to acknowledge that we have a relationship, and so I refuse to acknowledge him. He sent me a fire message asking for a favour the other day. It was addressed to Warlock Bane, as if we were a perfect stranger. He's still hung up on Jace, I think, though that relationship will never go anywhere. A problem I imagine you know nothing about. We are strengthening the characterization of our core characters. I think I know what's about to happen. I think I know what Sebastian's about to do. Can we not do this? We did it. No. She went numb with an icy shock of wrongness. Something was terribly wrong, something even more than her hopeless longing for someone she could never have. This was something else, a sudden jolt of horror, as if she'd been taking a confident step forward and suddenly plunged into a black void. Now that is the sense of wrongness that she always said or thought or had noted she was lacking when it came to Jace. I wonder why. And this isn't on Cassie because it's meant to be repulsive. It's written repulsively. This is why we look at it and go, there's no actual incest storyline. We aren't romanticizing an incest storyline because Jace and Clary aren't actually brother and sister. Spoiler alert. This is the spoilers vlog. But this is the wrongness. This is the repulsion that she doesn't have with Jace because Jace isn't her brother. But this is. I forgot how much Sebastian as a character boils my blood. We are just about to start part 3 of City of Glass. Oh my god, do we have a lot to catch up on. There is so much that has happened since we last chatted. I was literally sat downstairs on the sofa next to where my sister works from home, so we didn't vlog. We were very quiet, very respectful, but let's chat about it now. And yes, before I did this, I did throw a curl in my hair because I let my hair air dry, and that is my least favourite hair texture of mine. So we're about to start part 3, which is 327 pages into this book. So we have covered a lot of ground. Honestly, I think over 100 pages since I last chatted to you. The highlights. We are so happy that Clary is so innately repulsed by Sebastian because we do not condone the kiss, but that shows so much that Cassandra Clare and this narrative in general is not pro-incest. We know that Jace is not truly her brother, Sebastian is. So we're planting those seeds. Not only is he a shady guy, which is kind of what it just comes off as when you don't know the reveal later on, but there is some innate level of disgust towards siblings in this kind of romantic situation that is there, and it's something that has been noted between Clary and Jace that is lacking. The reason for that, this is all these little Easter eggs, these little signs that are woven into the narrative, because the reason for that is because they aren't actually related, and I'm so waiting for that reveal because I'm going to be so happy when it comes, because we just stand here going, you can be together, my people, you can. We also see that Jace in his self-destructive era. Now he is trying to act in a way that justifies the knowledge that he thinks he has, that he has additional blood in him that is from a demon. It literally is said that demon blood will burn out the humanity of whoever it is given to, and he goes to assume this. It's part of him trying to punish himself for his vulnerabilities and for loving others and allowing the vulnerability of his love to affect others. So he's trying to distance himself with the justification that his humanity has been burned away, and it's just further self-destruction. That's what we see when Jace leaves and tries to track Sebastian on his own and plans to kill Valentine on his own. It is a suicide mission, and it is because Jace is essentially given up caring for himself. Obviously, there's so much else that happens. Magnus, king that he is here like, okay, you just saved my life. Cool. We're being attacked by demons because demons attack Alicante. We're being attacked by demons. And your first reaction right now, as we're fighting for our lives, is to ask why I didn't call you. Alec, pedantic as ever. Now I'm asking why you didn't call me back. And then Alec also promising that if they get out of this alive and if they see the next day with their lives intact, he will introduce Magnus to all of his family. We're getting all this important information thrown at us. Meanwhile, we're getting these declarations of love and we're seeing these developments in relationships. We see Simon and Izzy kind of develop something because Max dies. And I remember crying the first time that happened. Didn't make me cry so far this time. Not had the first cry yet. Max is dead. And as a distraction from that fact and her guilt, Isabel uses Simon. I'm not mad. And then we have Alec and Magnus, and we have Jace coming to Clary before he leaves and thinking it's the last time he's ever going to see her, so he can finally risk saying what he feels, even though they still think they're siblings. I love you and I will love you until I die, and if there is a life after that, I will love you then. You just know this man has studied the poets, knows classical literature, because what is that line? Oh, and Jocelyn's back. Don't know how I feel about that. I stand by the fact that I think Luke is the best parent that any of them have in this, but more than that, he is one of the best leaders we see. I really like Luke in this reread. I remember not necessarily thinking Luke was much of note in my original read through, but now I look at it and go, he is an incredible leader, he is an incredible parental figure, and he takes responsibility on his shoulders for these children and their well-being, none of whom are actually his. And there's something so selfless about Luke. But Valentine is essentially threatening to enslave all Shadowhunters, so let's read that. I feel like this is like a Ding Dong the Witch is dead moment, except Ding Dong the wrong sibling perception is dead. Jocelyn has spoken. Jace is not, I repeat, not Clary's brother. We are not pro incest, we're just pro Clary and Jace. Sebastian is Clary's brother, thus Clary's instincts on who to be repulsed by and who not to be repulsed by were correct all along. We were sowing the seeds all along. It was never meant to be pro incest. I feel people on TikTok miss that nuance sometimes. The strength in alliances, it's almost like there is always another option. It's called uniting despite your differences against a common enemy. Because what we're proving in here, and what history has also shown us previously, is that when you do form alliances and when you do work together, it somehow works out better for everyone. If Simon and Jace ever want to talk about what they have in common, let's start with a self-sacrificing nature in the name of supposed duty. Because that's becoming apparent in Simon. Another day, another Shadowhunters book finished. I genuinely think this is the book where Cassandra Clare actually got into the rhythm of how she was going to write the books in this universe. Book 1 and book 2 were very much focused on our main characters, and it was about the plotted storyline, whereas here we finally get these interwoven different perspectives. We get our periphery characters brought in more so we can bring in a wider cast of characters. As such, we strengthen some of those relationships, not just between main couples or main best friend pairings, but the dynamics of the friendships and relationships that perhaps are more of the outliers of the group. I love that we see Jace and Simon grow into a kind of friendship and harbour this mutual respect for each other. For Jace, as we've explored so much, Jace tries to personify himself into a weapon. He tries to punish himself for his feelings, for loving, because he thinks it will cause destruction. He does this by isolating himself, which is achieved by pushing people away. He also sees his worth as tied purely to his soldier abilities, and this is all to do with how Valentine raised him, right? How he was shown or not shown love. When he finds out in this one that he potentially has demon blood in him, this just seems to be another excuse for him to continue those patterns of behaviours. He's searching for behaviours to rationalise this new piece of information. Obviously, by the end of it, we realise no, he has angel blood. Of course he does, because so much of Jace is innate goodness. He harbours empathy and loyalty like they are the life of his being. In the same way that he thinks to love is to destroy and to be loved is to be destroyed, he's so scared of his love for others that he's trying to protect people from it, thus showing the power that love holds. This has so many brilliant details. It seeds little moments here and there, such as Clary's reaction to Sebastian compared to her reaction to Jace. It paves the way for then the reveal that Sebastian, or Jonathan, is actually her brother, whereas Jace, adopted child of her father. Let's go with that one. There is such a clear differentiation between her reaction to Sebastian / Jonathan, who has demon blood, versus Jace, who has angel blood. Also, I feel like everyone should read these books just for the messaging. The fact that the Alliance rune brings Downwilders and Shadowhunters together who potentially have prejudices against each other, is encouraging them to work together against a common enemy, work together against oppression rather than seeing their differences. Valentine trying to make a master race and cleanse everyone, then just don't do that. Are my thoughts. Don't do that are the thoughts of history. Don't do that are what we're screaming into the in the world at the moment. Don't do that. Respect people's lives and their differences, please. Alec making out with Magnus in front of the whole clave while they're doing the Alliance runes in the Accords Hall. Like, talk about making a statement. I'm cheering them on. I love some Alec and Magnus, and I know in these first 3 books, we actually don't get a lot of clear content of Alec and Magnus. We get a lot of subtext, especially for the time these were written. That representation was representation when there was not really any, and I know for me, I really appreciated it at the time. So you can see why a fandom has latched onto it, and as time has gone on, as readers have gone on, and as what it's published has gone on, we have got more of that Magnus and Alec content. What I'm saying is, I think this book is where we really hit our stride with what the rest of the Shadowhunters Chronicles is going to become. That intertwined, multiple perspective, complex cast of characters, and interesting themes that we can garner some lessons from in our society today. I have not started editing this vlog yet, but we still have one more book to go in this vlog before I wrap it up, so let's hope that I don't have as much footage as I'm slightly scared I do. But we will get into that book tomorrow. For some reason now I can't start vlogging without saying it's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life, signifying a new day has begun. It's a weird quirk that we've got into. You may recognise this look from the intro of the video. I did just film the intro for this video because I haven't done my hair and makeup and put an outfit on all in the same day for a minute. We are starting the last book for this specific reading vlog today, which is the Red Scrolls of Magic. This is the first in the eldest curses, which I always think is a real mouthful to say, and this follows Magnus and Alec a little bit more closely, which I'm never mad about. We know I've expressed I love Magnus and Alec. I have had some people say, as we get later into the series and as this series came out as well, this feels a little bit like fan service because Cassandra Clare is aware people love Magnus and Alec. I think there's a conversation to be had that perhaps there was a real fan response to Magnus and Alec from, you know, these first 3 books where a lot is said in subtext. I've talked about this. We also have to talk about the difference in wider social attitudes and perhaps the attitudes of publishing and publishers and the risk they'd be taking in publishing more queer content, more queer heavy content at the time of publication for these books, which, like I said, the first one came out, at least the publication date in mine is 2007. That's probably around 7 years before gay marriage was legalized. This is the 2000s. There was definitely different social perceptions, and just having the representation helps to break down those barriers, which means we can later get more content. Does it feel fan servicey to some? Maybe, especially if Magnus and Alec aren't your favourite, but they are mine. So I'm not mad about it. And we definitely do get bits in here that serve the purpose of the plot. Magnus is a key tenement to this entire kind of wider series outside of the individual series anyway. He is a through line and a thread that connects everything along that's outside of just the Shadowhunter families. So I don't think there's ever a place where Magnus isn't important, and where there is Magnus, there is eventually Alec. I'm playing chauffeur to my parents today because they have gone up to London to see a show, the Live Aid musical, for their wedding anniversary. So I need to actually stay awake, coherent and dressed to go and pick them up from the station when they're done. It's currently coming up for 5 o'clock. We're 62 pages in. I think we can probably read at least the majority, if not all, of this book tonight. Fun things we've seen so far. Tessa's made an appearance. Obviously, the order I'm reading this in now, I haven't yet met Tessa, but I'm rereading, so I have met Tessa, if that makes sense. But there are little hints as to who Tessa is. Alec notes that Tessa reminded him of Jace, obviously who we have learned is a Herondale. One thing I will note, obviously this is a slightly shorter book compared to what we obviously find in like the Dark Artifices series, but also compared to some of the Mortal Instruments, this doesn't break 400 pages. The writing is definitely less descriptive, a little bit less complex, and we have a smaller cast of characters. This focuses so specifically on Magnus and Alec that we aren't playing as much with those outlier characters and their dynamics with one another. I don't think that's a bad thing, but it's definitely a shift from just reading City of Glass, and I think perhaps highlights that this isn't meant to hold the same complexities as the Mortal Instruments comes to, or any of the other series comes to, because whilst this is a series, both books are kind of shorter, it won't necessarily be as significant as we see in the other books in the other series. One thing I'm personally really enjoying is considering all the subtext that Malik exists within in the first 3 Mortal Instruments books. I love that we're getting to see a little bit more of what starting a new relationship looks like for these people. For Alec, who's never had a relationship before, who's also coming to terms with being publicly gay and showing public displays of affection, in contrast to Magnus, who has loved and lost before, and the politics of Magnus being a downworlder, Alec being a shadow hunter, and we see those politics unfold in multiple ways. Magnus holding back perhaps on things he tells Alec in the past and worrying what he will think, but also when, for example, we just went to the shadow market and Alec not necessarily being welcome, even though shadow hunters are allowed in the shadow market. Vendors being a lot less likely to talk to Magnus, even though they trust him, if Alec is with him. So we're seeing all of these complex dynamics and the politics of this world be fleshed out a little bit more, even if it's not as specifically as we saw in City of Glass with the Alliance runes and the seats on the Council for Downworlders. And I will say, although it is perhaps slightly less descriptive and flowery lyrical writing than we saw in the Mortal Instruments series, there is some gorgeous descriptions of Paris. Since I last read this, I have actually been to Paris now. I think there's something really special about reading a book and hearing about a city that's not your city but you have traveled to, and knowing the landmarks, understanding what's being described to you and being able to envision it from your own travels. It is one of my favorite things, so I am finding that at the moment with Paris. I've also, if you haven't noticed, started picking either a song or an album to listen to along with each of the books I'm reading. This time, I didn't really know what to go for, and then for some reason, I thought about the Death of a Bachelor album from Panic at the Disco, which I will be perfectly honest, was definitely the soundtrack to my year 11 year, which was when I was 15, 16 at school. For some reason, it just seems to fit Magnus, suits Magnus quite well, I think. And we still are getting those very dramatic, exuberant glimpses of Magnus as a character, which I really love. The reason I adore Magnus is he seems so true to himself, and honestly, who wouldn't set up a joke cult if you were immortal and just got a little bit drunk one day? I mean, some of the ideas we came up with at uni when we were drunk, like they don't get mentioned anywhere. Also, I don't think I've mentioned, this is the first book where it's not just Cassandra Clare writing it. This is Cassandra Clare and Wesley Chu. Now, I never know in these collaborative writing projects that we see in some of the series like this one or the short story collections, I don't know how much of the writing is done by Cassandra Clare, how much is done by the additional writers who's to say? Obviously, it's always Cassandra Clare's world and characters. I think it's interesting that you can always feel when it's not just Cassandra Clare who's had her hands on the story. So number one, fuck Robert Lightwood, because look, son, you can't think there's any future in this, not with a downworlder or a man. I understand that you feel like you have to be true to yourself, but sometimes it's best to be wise and take a different path, even if you feel tempted. Sometimes the truth brings happiness, Robert. Also, such Magnus, his boyfriend, appears covered in mud, looking like he's just been in a fight, and Magnus goes, "Hey honey, what's new?" I love him. Also, Magnus's approach to going to Venice. No mission is so dangerous it isn't worth doing it in style. They're trying to shut down a demon-worshipping cult, but no mission is so dangerous it isn't worth doing it in style. This is what I mean, that I love that we're still getting these pieces of characterization that we only saw glimpses of that brought that levity into the Mortal Instruments series. And this is why I really love Magnus Bane as a character. We know he carries a lot of history and weight with him. He's been in some very serious situations and he's very powerful, but he still has these moments of levity that he brings to things and he has fun with them. And that is what I love. I mean, the first time we met him, he was throwing a birthday party for his cat that is called Chairman Meow. And that is iconic. We're going to make my coffee together because I realise I have hours to stay awake whilst I've already had a coffee today. We need another one. So we're gonna do it together. Starting with my super cute little pumpkin glass with the little top and the straw, love. Ice. Because I am a bisexual woman and it is part of our culture that we do iced coffee year round. Hello. The amount of wine in my parents' fridge has substantially increased since I returned home from uni. Anyway, next up is milk. We make this like a little iced latte, except it's with instant coffee. So quite a bit of milk. Like half of this is milk. That's more milk than I actually wanted. Could also do this with oat milk, that works, and we do have oat milk. I just didn't decide to use oat milk. Next up is our hazelnut syrup. This I usually just grab from TK Maxx, honestly, or HomeSense. That was way more than I intended. I'm heavy-handed pouring today. Right, that goes to one side. Next I grab a mug, and it is any mug. This one is a Christmas mug that says "Have a holly jolly Christmas." My name is Holly. We love it. My year 9 form tutor gave that to me when I was 13? Decade ago. She's still thriving. This is Little's instant coffee, but it's the French vanilla one. I've had the normal one as well, and I know they have a hazelnut one, but I've yet to find it. I literally just, we shake and pour with our hearts. But this is a lot smoother than a lot of instant coffees I've had, which is why I like it. And I don't make a full glass. So the kettle is boiling, but we just have a little bit of cold water in there. And I just stand here and like swirl it. And I feel like a teacher doing playground duty. And this has way more of everything than it should. So let's see what hazelnut syrup and milk tastes like. Actually really nice. Tiny bit of boiling water. Beautiful. Swirl. Need like a lanyard, and then it's like very teacher on playground duty. Boys, or my line when I was a TA, let's not. And do a little more. Isn't she pretty? And she tastes gorgeous too. Honestly, this is the best way I've found so far of making like an at-home iced latte without a coffee machine, like an espresso machine. I would like to point out that I did say an espresso machine, not an espresso machine. Let's get back to reading. I just had a thought. I know, shock horror. It's because Alec was talking about his runes and the dexterity runes specifically because he's climbing out of the Orient Express to save Magnus from a demon. Casual. Anyway, earlier in the book, whilst Magnus was pointing out constellations and they were doing a bit of stargazing, and he explained this is romantic to Alec. He asked Alec about what his specific runes are, but he had the grey book and showed it to Clary with all of the runes in it, and specifically showed her one that was meant to help jog her memory and like open up her mind in City of Bones when they went to his party. So surely Magnus has some understanding of Shadowhunter runes, especially because of how old he is. And by the point this was written, we know that he knew all of the Shadowhunters in the Infernal Devices. Is that just him trying to be cute, being like, you can teach me something, I can teach you something, or is that a slight plot hole? Today's dinner is just a garlic bread baguette. Listen, I am a girl who appreciates a fine dining, multiple course, curated dinner experience. I'm also a girl who loves girl dinner, and that is what I'm calling this. A fun little girl dinner. I mean, in my book, girl dinner should have a glass of wine with it, but I'm on standby as a chauffeur, so no drink for me tonight. We're in Venice now. Come, demon hunters, we're going shopping. We've made it to page 188. What I'm enjoying is that we're getting to see a little bit more depth from Magnus. Obviously, we see this very fun persona, but we're also seeing him battle this kind of weight of grief and regret of potentially founding this cult. With that being said, the joke cult is very fun. Oh my god, my cult is so low rent. I'm deeply shamed. I'm disowning my followers for being evil and having no panache. Putting a bar cart next to a sacrificial altar, and just how clearly a joke this is, and dramatic and flamboyant, and yes, a little bit self-indulgent and frivolous, but there's fun in it. It sounds like something people come up with on a drunk night out, and it is. The prince wishes only the best for his children, thus to honour his name there must be a hearth crowded with only the finest of liquors and cigars and bonbons. Tits of treasures and gifts showered upon the great poison symbolise the love between the faithful. So keep the spirits flowing and the gold growing, and always remember the sacred rules. Life is a stage, so exit in style. Only the faithful who make a truly great drink shall be favoured. Offend not the great poison with cruel deeds or poor fashion. Seek the children of demons. Love them as you love your Lord. Do not let the children be alone. What I love about this is, even in its most jokey state, when Magnus was not taking it seriously, his need to care for others and him as a caregiver is present. He protects people. It's what he's always done. It's what he does with his Shadowhunters. It's what he evidently does with other downworlders like Raphael, and not an evil cult leader. Perhaps a slightly drunk cult creator. What the Red Scrolls of Magic, what that's giving is Klaus Hargreaves accidentally founding a cult. Also, FYI, not sure I trust Shinyan, because where were you when a whole mansion was collapsing? Alec, Aline and Helen storming the Crimson Hand to save Magnus is really giving gaze to the rescue. I mean, queer people, we find each other. We become a community, even within other communities. Like, people always search each other out and find each other. Well, well, well. How the tables have turned on Shinyan. We are performing dutiful daughter duties, so we are reading in the car, waiting for my parents at the station. Such fun. I'm literally almost finished. I have maybe 40 pages left. We have officially finished Red Scrolls of Magic. This isn't necessarily the same depth of storytelling and writing that we see from Cassandra Clare elsewhere in the Shadowhunters Chronicles. It's not the same complexity we've seen take place from City of Glass onwards, but what it is an amazing look at character development. And I think that's a little bit more of what this book was intended to do. Yes, it's an amazing story of European cities, and it's a fantasy story at the heart of it. It's a story of brave warriors, and it's a story of purity of heart, of intention, of hope for a better future. But amongst all of that, it's forefronting Alec and Magnus and a growing relationship between them. It is putting in front of a YA audience an 18-year-old who is navigating his first relationship as a queer person and letting him feel all of the doubts and uncertainties that come alongside that and exploring them in depth. It's finding a place for two queer protagonists who have complex relationships with themselves, with their past, with their identities, with each other. And it's also giving a little bit of hope that we can find a world or forge a world where all are accepted, not despite their differences, but are celebrated because of them. Magnus was the first bold and charismatic and deeply complex bisexual character I saw in literature, and so I will always have a real soft spot for Magnus and Alec. Some will say these books are fan service just because people love this relationship, but I think it's more than that. It showcases that their relationship and these characters was something we needed from a representation standpoint when these books came out, and they are something that we've seen progress allow to take center stage and have their stories told without too much backlash stopping it from even being published. And that, to me, is the significance of this book. It doesn't necessarily move the plot along as much as the Mortal Instruments books we've read this far in the read-along, but I do think it develops these two characters so much in a way that I really did think was lacking. And that is the first of my Shadowhunters reading vlogs complete. Honestly, I feel like there's so much that I picked up on, both character development wise and just plot wise, that I had forgotten or not realized the first time around. Luke is definitely a stronger and more significant character than I remember him being, and the development of Jace and his internalized trauma, really interesting and really complex for a YA novel. Now, as I explored with the Red Scrolls of Magic, obviously we see in this series the development of the queer representation, which I will always commend in Cassandra Clare's books. I know I've rambled on for over an hour in this vlog, so let's not get into it too much. I am sure I've covered as much as I can up to this point, but there will be so many more vlogs coming after this one, tackling the rest of the Shadowhunters Chronicles. The next vlog will be the Infernal Devices. If you are interested in sticking around to see those vlogs, please hit the subscribe button, give me a little like, and let me know in the comments what your favourite series within the Shadowhunters Chronicles is, what book you are excited for me to get to, and any theories you might have for the Wicked Powers when it eventually comes out, I think next year. But I hope you all have a lovely day.